We'll call the meeting to order. First thing is the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
You've got a motion by Grant, second by Kevin, to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
No citizens to be heard. Approval of the payment of the bills and vouchers.
Move approval.
Motion by Jim, second by Jenny, to approve the bills. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Here we got minutes from the April the 14th meeting. Need approval on that.
Move to approve.
Second. Second.
Motion by Grant, second by Kevin, to approve the minutes of the April the 14th. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. First thing is County Administrator, Mr. Larson, permission to increase the Clay County credit card limits.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. As you are aware, we have a credit card purchasing policy within our procurement contract, procurement and contract administration policy, and that establishes our guidelines and limitations for use of the credit card. One portion of that policy, section C1, establishes our daily and our monthly limits on the credit card. Our daily limit currently is $2,000 per day, and our 30-day limit is roughly $5,000. Recently, over the last few months, we've had department heads that have reported that they've not been able to complete purchases based on our inability to have enough funds or ability to meet the needs of based on the credit card limit. And so we haven't reviewed this policy by our commissioner, our board, since 2004. And so before you this morning for your consideration, we would request, after discussion with Lori and the auditor's office, of moving our single day purchases to $5,000 and our 30-day limit to $10,000. Just for your understanding, that wouldn't mean that every card would automatically go to that. Each department head would have to request the adjustment, but it would allow for up to that dollar amount to be utilized on their credit cards. And with that, I will yield for any questions.
Any questions concerning moving it up to the 5,000 limit and the 30-day 10,000 limit?
I'll make a motion to approve the request. I'll second the motion.
You've got a motion by Grant, second by Jim, to move the credit card limit to the single day purchase from to 5,000 and the 30-day limit to 10,000. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Kathy's not here again? Not here yet, excuse me. I hear her in the hallways, yes. We'll go to committee reports. Jenny, you want to give your report?
Last week, I sat in on the Board of Adjustment meeting. It was their first virtual hearing, and I felt that went quite well. They did recommend approval of those. I had the Planning Commission meeting, which was also 2 hearings for virtual issues. The first was a request for an interim use of a recreational vehicle park for 3-month duration. The township spoke not in favor of that, and so we tabled the decision until the township has the opportunity to weigh in on that. And then we had a petition for a text amendment to the Clay County Development Code, creating a new commercial and industrial use for a manufacturing of a possible cast concrete facility. That was recommended to this board, and I think we'll act on that within the next month. And then Wednesday had a Cass Clay Food Partners meeting. We talked a little bit about the food access issues that I've referred to in the past couple meetings, and discussed the possibility of any interim food policy ordinances that the cities may or may not take up. But from Clay County's perspective, we're not looking to add anything at this point. Lakes and Prairies had an in-depth meeting in terms of what they're doing during the COVID crisis to still reach the people that they serve, so they continue to do good work there. Land Management had a great update in regards regards to the NDSU study. I'm gonna request from Eric that everyone on this board gets that. I think it's pretty important in terms of ag impacts and situational issues with that in terms of farmland. And then yesterday I had the Lakeland Mental Health meeting. We got a report from the center on their numbers. For the first time in a long time, you can access the Moorhead Clinic quite quickly just because of COVID. But they continue to do good work there. We had an update on the collaboratives, Clay County Collaborative update from Mike McCarthy, discussed the truancy intervention program that just really isn't working. And so the money from that specific program will be allocated, hopefully to reach the same clientele. The current model is just not quite working in their aspect. They did receive the small business loan in terms of payment protection plan so that they're able to keep services at the same level that they've been doing. And yesterday I also attended the Buffalo River Watershed meeting. Good discussion. They passed 10 permits for different applications. Had a couple of change order in the Wolverton Creek project. They approved an Minnesota State University contract in terms of the Whiskey Creek enhancement. They will be looking at getting going on that, and they discussed our letter. They are creating a subcommittee to make a recommendation to us on weighing in on Bruce's retirement. And I just think it really should be said that yesterday was Bruce Albright's last meeting at the watershed, and Bruce has selflessly served Clay County and the watershed for 40 years. And while I've only worked with him 5 short years, while I've been on the board, I know that he worked with my grandfather when my grandfather was in the legislature. And I really want to say from me and maybe from this board that thanks to Bruce. Just was a great person that got a lot of projects done, so thank you.
Mr. Chair, maybe we should invite Mr. Albright here for some recognition at some point, so to thank him for his service.
And they also then appointed Kathy, who we've all worked with as the interim administrator. So Kathy Finger will now serve in that position. And that concludes my reports.
Okay. Kathy, you got more people coming?
Just the 2 of us.
Very good. Okay, we'll take you next. We get an update on the COVID-19 report from Kathy.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I passed out just information on our case count as we track it daily. And right now, our Clay County cases are 131. So they continue to rise. I know today there will be additional cases added. So we'll see that number continue to go up. Some of that is just, I think there's certainly a backlog in some of the testing, but we also have cases that increase. We have Clay County deaths as 9 currently right now. And then the Minnesota cases, you can see, is close to 4,000 positive cases and then 286 across the state of Minnesota. It talks about the number of completed tests we have, 61,268. And then the hospitalizations, 861, and those that were in intensive care. We had some hospitalizations in Clay County as well, and I'm not sure how many of those are out of the hospital, but there's still a few cases in there. And then they talk about the median age of all the cases. As you can see, the median age and the age ranges. in Clay County, on the graph, the line graph, we still have a large number of the cases in that age range of 30 to 39. So that's in the colored graph. So that's still a large range. And then the 80 plus and the 60 to 69, those are close to the same numbers of percentage that we're seeing in cases, but we're seeing them across the age spectrum. We have, you know, we had as young as a 2-year-old and some children under the age of 12, that 0 to 9, and then the 10 to 19. So we're really seeing it still in all age ranges. On the back page is the graph about the source of exposure. Initially, when we first started, you know, the pandemic, seems like forever ago, but hasn't been that long, but the travel was the number one source of exposure. And now again, it's really community spread. That unknown or missing, that 43% is we just do not know. The individuals do not know their source of exposure. They're not aware that they were exposed to someone that was positive or had symptoms. So there again, as we can consider that community spread, those people that are asymptomatic and yet carry the virus. So that's a large number of the unknown and missing. And then congregate living settings, and Josh will talk a lot more about our work with that, but there's certainly, that's an area that we're looking at and across the nation, is once it, you know, becomes evident in congregate care, like long-term care facilities, then it seems like the spread is pretty rapid. Those individuals with compromised immune systems or other healthcare medical issues, it seems to go pretty fast there. So those are numbers to date. Again, Clay County continues to rise. Cass County has, I believe their number was 431 cases with 9 deaths. So their numbers are up in Cass County as well. Their CDC has come out with recommendations for the new symptoms. So initially the symptoms were shortness of breath and fever and respiratory symptoms. And now they're seeing, as they studied this and as many cases as they've seen, they're now including other symptoms that they're going to be checking. So chills is one of them, having chills and shaking chills, muscle pain, headache, sore throat, and the loss of taste or smell. If you suddenly lost your taste or smell, that can be a symptom, and it seems to be coming up quite frequently. So those are new additional symptoms that they're going to be doing symptom checks with. So it's beyond now just being short of breath, respiratory symptoms, and a fever. So there's a variety of others as well. So as they look at this, they're still recommending, as people are delaying going into the emergency room, if they have medical needs. So if they have trouble breathing or pressure in their chest, or other medical issues, they don't want people to delay going into the emergency room. You wouldn't think people would, but they're so focused on COVID and maybe some concern about going to the emergency room. So they're really pushing that. The medical systems have talked about it on their press conference. So just to keep everybody informed of that. The Governor Walz has signed a new executive order, and that is authorizing out-of-state healthcare professionals to render aid in Minnesota during this COVID event. And that's pretty significant for us in the fact that we have nurses that have a North Dakota license but are unable to work in Minnesota unless they applied for a Minnesota license. Minnesota has never been part of what we call compact states. So some states that surround each other are saying if you have a license in one state, you can work in the others with that same license. Not only nurses, but other healthcare professionals, nurse practitioners. So it makes sense. We all take the same national boards. So the governor, we've really kind of, and I kind of pushed some information up to that office, and others did as well. For us on the bordering community, it just makes really good sense. If we can pull some needed healthcare workers onto this side of the river, but they have a North Dakota license only. So technically they wouldn't be able to work in Minnesota unless they went through the process of getting a nursing license or a medical license. So this is very good. His executive order is excellent for us on bordering communities particularly. So we're very pleased about that and happy that we can recruit maybe some medical staff if need be, or some nursing staff.
Does that include CNAs, down to CNAs?
CNAs, I don't believe is in this executive order, but they're able to practice on the Minnesota side. They have recognized CNAs as that. So this is more the licensed healthcare professionals, but CNAs can work across the border. They do have still the who should get tested for COVID. So, and this is coming from the Minnesota Department of Health. And the people that do not have symptoms are generally not tested. Now, as testing supplies become more available, and you see the governor talk about that in Minnesota and also in North Dakota. So as testing supplies become more available, we should see a lot more people being able to be tested, because we do know that you can have the virus and not have symptoms. But they're still recommending, like people in congregate living settings or where there's an outbreak, they should get tested. We saw last weekend where Fargo had the mass testing, then it was really those that would be exposed to someone that they knew they were exposed to a positive. And so they had some criteria for testing, but they did not check whether you were a citizen of North Dakota or Minnesota. So anyone could have gone through that testing. We initially heard the numbers were over 1,000 tested, but I think there might be a different number that was stated today. So I haven't checked to see if there was many more tested. But and then they'll really determine mostly what they're looking for is what is the percentage of community spread. So who are the people that really didn't have any symptoms, that maybe known exposure, or maybe they didn't know they were exposed. We'll see how many positives we get out of that testing, and that will be made public as well. We have 2 testing sites, additional testing sites in Hawley Clinic. So they're part of the Sanford system. So they will now do testing at the Hawley Clinic, and that is still a call ahead. You can't just walk in and do that. And they're open weekdays like 8 to 5. So they can do testing now there. That's new. And then the Ulen Clinic, that's also a Sanford clinic. And they can do testing in Ulen. Again, a call ahead. But the Ulen Clinic is, their hours are just Monday and Thursday, 8 to 5. So there's a couple of other opportunities for citizens if they want to get tested and they meet the criteria. They will screen them just like they do anyway at Sanford and Essentia. And so there's a couple of testing sites.
How about the
there.
Moorhead? Is Moorhead doing it?
We have heard that if the Moorhead Clinic, if they get the referral from the facility, if there's a client that is part of that system, that we just have to call and see if they'll accept them over there to get tested. But it's not listed as a public site yet. It may be. And then the governor's, just going back to the governor's executive order, the Minnesota Board of Nursing has put some information out about the overwhelming response to needing nurses more than anything with long-term care and assisted living. There's many across the state that are just in urgent need of nursing staff. And also the Emergency Medical Services Regulatory Board, EMSRB, also put that out, that there's a need for, particularly in long-term care and assisted living facilities, there is a need for those healthcare workers. So I will turn it over, unless you have quick questions for me, but I'll turn it over to Josh. He's doing a tremendous amount of work with our congregate living facilities, and he can talk through what is going on in those areas.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Josh.
Hi. Real quickly, just want to, as you are all well aware, my role within the public health department on normal operations would be emergency preparedness coordinator, which I am still doing that work. But during the COVID pandemic, my role within their incident command structure is planning section chief. And then now, within the last 2 weeks, as we've seen, that, Kathy was talking about the numbers and the increases we've seen within our communities with the cases and the amount of community spread, we've seen a, significant increase also in how that's affecting our congregate care settings, not just our homeless populations, but also includes our long-term care, our corporate foster care facilities, our assisted living facilities, and our transitional housing also. We have a lot of that in Moorhead. And so the point person now with local public health, between local public health and our congregate care settings, as Kathy alluded to, there's an increasing need we've seen, especially those hotspots around the state, for facilities that are experiencing an outbreak. What seems to happen is that it affects their staff, it affects their residents, or a combination thereof, both at the same time. And so they end up with staffing challenges. And so as we've seen in case in point down in Wayzata a week or so ago, they had to evacuate a long-term care facility. It was a pretty desperate situation. We're trying to be very proactive and get ahead of this as much as we can. And so one of the avenues that we have at our disposal, and I'm a coordinator for Minnesota Response and Medical Reserve Corps, it's a partnership that integrates and engages local, regional, and statewide volunteers. And so it's a pool of individuals who have voluntarily went through and applied to be, and they're vetted. I do that work for Clay County as the coordinator, and then they become a part of this pool that we can go to and look for volunteers during a disaster or emergency. And that's becoming a pool that we're looking at as really maybe a lifeline to some degree as this continues to ramp up. And so from public health out to the public, what we're asking for is if you're able and willing, some of the needs that we're seeing in our congregate care facilities is a need for staffing. Some of those are licensed positions, RNs, LPNs, CNAs and such, that are needed to do that direct care with residents. We also have wraparound services or ancillary services that are needed. So culinary, food services, laundry work that needs to get done, basic cleaning, things like that, that people may not think of, but is very, very important so that the other people that are there, if there's shortages in staff, can do their work. And so, with that said, the web address for this, for those that are watching and interested, is www.mnresponse.org. It'll be put on our Facebook page, Clay County Public Health Facebook page, and we put it on our Clay County website for those that are interested. And you can go to that website, mnresponse.org, and you can sign up to be a volunteer. And so basically the process, how it works, is that if we have a need in a care facility, and this really is the focus right now, that were to come up and it's desperate and critical, we will go to that pool of volunteers first. And we will look for those that have put their information in there. We will call them directly. We'll find out what they're capable of, what they put in their licenses if they have them, or their skills, that kind of thing. And then we'll see where their best fit would be before the request is coming in. So the Aspen facility will go through public health. We will try to fulfill their need for them in a crisis. But we need to have people willing to come in and do that work. If we don't, it puts us in a real pickle. As we can see what's going on around the country and around other places that are hotspots, as this ramps up, it can be devastating. So, whatever we can do to get volunteers in there, we're asking for that help. They're doing the best they can. These facilities, some of them are really struggling, but they're doing the best that they can. They love their clients, they're taking care of them, they're doing, trying to provide the best service. These people are, the residents that are there, no fault of their own, are there and they're kind of locked in, so there's no human interaction, not as much. Our family can't come in, and then they have these outbreaks on top of it. So it is very interesting to have to work through some of these challenges, but I think that we're in a good position to really provide what we need, provide for them what they need. So So that's really that was really my focus today, was to just kind of give you an update on what's going on in that sector. Because we all know that they're the ones that are getting hit the hardest when it comes in. And so we want to do everything we can to make sure that they have the resources they need to take care of their residents. So that really kind of, I think, covers most of it, Kathy. Is there anything else that we can touch on? Okay, any questions about that for me?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I have a question,
Yeah.
a couple for you, and then follow, and it's kind of both in the same area, and it's what I talked about last time, and I want to, so these congregate care facilities, we've seen kind of an explosion take place. Wouldn't that be a way to say it? In our facilities in Clay County and in Cass County, I suppose it's the same. I want to go back to when we see, so we've had for quite some time now, these facilities have been, from what I understand, they've been kind of locked down from the public getting in. That being said, how is this happening? How if it's so locked down, and this goes back to my question last time regarding contact tracing, that I think is going to be so important, even as we start to open things back up. You know, and this goes to Kathy, what you were talking about, and I'll let you, you know, comment on it too, what you think, but how well are we handling this contact tracing? Right now, it's all being done at the state level, which, you know, I mentioned to a couple of board members after our meeting last week, and I don't know that I want to depend on that, just because of how, you know, how busy they could be across the state. And I am concerned, obviously we're concerned about the entire state, but I'm concerned about all of our residents of Clay County and how we can avoid this expanding in our county. And it seems to me that I would like to have local boots on the ground working on that. This is something that hours can make a difference. When you think about you know, a virus spreading, hours can make a difference, let alone days and weeks. And so
I'll let Kathy take a crack at it first.
okay.
Is this one working?
Yep.
I think when you talk about how the long-term care facilities were locked down, that is absolutely true, but you know that there's workers coming in. So all of the healthcare workers, other ancillary services, there's a lot of people coming in to provide services. So that's certainly an area of spread, because the residents themselves are not getting out and family members are not getting in. So there's only one source then, anyone that's coming into work, and not to blame the workers, they're just, it's
No.
around the community and it's out there. And many of these workers initially have no symptoms. So they've worked with some individuals in that setting and they have no symptoms themselves. And then yet 2 or 3, 5 days later, they start having symptoms.
That's
Well, they've already
asymptomatic.
spread.
Yep.
And so that's unfortunate, but the facts that there's certainly that's the only individuals coming into those settings. And then once you have this individual, and maybe it's someone that's working, a caregiver at the bedside, you're working with multiple individuals. So it's pretty easily spread from the worker to multiple individuals, and that's how it continues to ramp up. And the individuals oftentimes are, again, they have low immune systems or they have medical conditions. It's just more difficult, and it's more catastrophic because they do become more ill or even need hospitalization. So that's part of that, to answer some of your question about that. I believe that's what we're seeing, is there's no way to get around that as workers coming in, as even though they're doing the best precautions they can.
Right.
It's still unfortunately an area that spreads.
But all those workers going in, if they're tested, they're going to test positive even if they're asymptomatic.
On the day they get tested, If the virus is enough where they test positive on that day, yes. But they could be negative because they don't have enough virus circulating and yet be positive the next day. Minnesota takes a stance that the testing is only good that very day. You don't know, tomorrow they can have more of the virus circulating in their system and it makes the test positive.
So in other words, the first test, it just might be not strong enough in their system to
Correct.
detect it.
Could be, yes.
Is that kind of a way?
That's correct, yep. And what they call maybe a false negative, because there might be some circulating virus, but it's not enough to make the test positive. So it's only good that day, and they could be positive the next or the next. So the mass testing is why they say that's the very reason why they don't do the mass testing in Minnesota, even though, and I know it's frustrating because North Dakota has done some mass testing in their long-term care facilities, at least one that I know of, and one shelter area. But again, the testing is only good of that day. So there's still positives coming out of that were negative, and then they're becoming positive a day or a week later.
So have they improved this type of testing, Kathy, I know they have the one that supposedly is not real comfortable taking. And
Right.
Have they developed other ones besides that? Is that what they're still using? And what's wrong with doing multiple tests on an individual from day to day who might be a healthcare worker?
They could, other than the lack of testing kits. You know, they were so short of testing kits across the nation. They're getting more and more in, so their intent is to eventually expand that testing. But yes, the one you talk about is pretty deep swab, but they have other testing ability. For instance, like the drive-through was not the deep swab. It was just a swab in the nares, but it wasn't as deep as some of the other previous testing.
And they supposedly work now.
And still is effective to testing, yes. And then they have what they call the rapid testing, where they get the results in, hours versus days. And then the other testing where they send it out. I know Essentia still sends many tests out to the Mayo Clinic because their lab is doing the results. Sanford sends a lot of their results or their tests out to Sioux Falls, to their lab out there, so.
Well, I just,
going a
for
variety of
the
places.
board here, I don't know where this is going to go, and I don't know what we're going to be doing at the end of May 4th in Minnesota and Clay County if we're going to be opening up, but the virus isn't going to be gone.
Correct.
We know that, so it seems to me the key thing here is going to be testing and contact tracing. I've said that before. And I just think we as a board should be ready to say, we want to make a commitment that we're going to do whatever we can to do contact tracing as fast as we can here in Clay County. And I don't know if that's going to mean talking to the governor to allow it, right now it's the Minnesota Department of Health's position that they're going to do it all. Isn't that what you've said in the past?
That has been their stance. I know they hired 20 more individuals last week to kind of keep up with the contact tracing. I will just say this, that there is discussions currently this week about potentially eliciting the local public health across Minnesota to get involved in the contact tracing. So
Well,
nothing official has come out yet. I
Okay,
just
well,
want
I said this last week, and I'll say it today. I think that would be worth our investment
Okay.
here in Clay County. I firmly believe that would be in our best interest to stay on top of it here and not depend on somebody from Minneapolis or St. Paul making calls locally and
Sure.
maybe, I just think it's in our best interest to do that.
Okay, that's,
I don't know if anybody else wants to share in that, but as a board, I think we should be,
I think if you look at, on March 30th, there was 576 total cases in Minnesota, and today there's 3,816. And there's no way 20 people can keep on contact.
That's my point.
On top of the contact tracing.
yeah, there's 75. There were 75 to begin with. They just hired an additional 20, so there's close to 100 people doing that. But you're right, Commissioner Mojo, I'm pretty confident that that's what they're going to make the request to local public health. And again, then we'd have to train people, and the state is setting up if they push that out, they're setting up the plans to train as well, because people have to be trained to do that. It does not require a registered nurse or even a licensed practical nurse, but there has to be training. So yes, we would need some manpower to do that.
Well, and I don't know if it's appropriate to do this, but I just think in a day and age where the information this morning is dated by this evening, and so, maybe we could discuss the possibility of, if you come up with a reasonable request to hire the manpower hours locally, I would give Steve, depending on what the board wanted to do, Steve the authority to sign off on that until this board met. And, I'll kind of go off of what Commissioner Campbell said. The reality with these congregate care is you have one employee that tests sick, then the virus is present in that facility, and there's an enormous lack of appropriate PPE. So if you're trying to do rounds and you don't have the PPE you need, it's not their fault. So my question is, what more can we do to help these local congregate care areas get the PPE that they may need?
Do you want to talk
Yeah,
about,
sure.
just briefly about
Yeah,
that?
I can do that. So we've established also somebody within public health who is the point of contact for all of our primary care facilities for PPE and infection control. And we also have added in, this was a couple weeks ago now, we added in 2 liaison individuals who their mission is to reach out to, and we developed a process for this to our congregate care facilities from public health to them almost on a daily basis to collect, just see what their status is, get a situation update, because what we found was is that the delay was way too long in when testing was being done and when we would be notified of the facility or the person or whatever. So we had to build this into our process so that we would be the first to know, and so we're asking them. And they're willing to participate. I'll just say that all of the years that we put into partnershiping with them through Corporate Foster Care Coalition, our Long-Term Care Association with that share, has really paid off because they have those personal relationships. They're used to talking and working with us already. So they'll provide us that information, and then we're able to follow up on it immediately and fulfill those needs. We just picked up a significant cache of material the other day that's in our response trailer.
PPE.
PPE that we picked up from the regional cache that we now have here in Clay County. It's in our trailer secured, and so we're able to get that to them almost immediately. So there isn't a delay, really much of a delay at all anymore. So we're really refined that. Also, just to touch on your comments earlier, Commissioner Campbell, you kind of mentioned the boots on the ground, and this is kind of a boots on the ground approach. These are all things we're doing proactively as best we can, with what we have to get ahead of this. And so those things I mentioned already, plus my role now as the contact for specifically discussing with those facilities that are struggling potentially with staffing or see that they're on the horizon, they could potentially be in a crisis. We want to hit it early. We want to be ahead of the game, not waiting till the end until we get a call from the state that says, we've got a problem.
Right.
Well, no, we want to know about it well in advance. And so we have to have these direct relationships and contacts so that we can keep in the know and help guide them through this, because this is new for them too. This is a struggle. And I'm not in their facilities, but when I hear them tell me personal stories and personal situations that they're having to deal with, it really becomes emotional.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I don't really think of it that way, but.
If I can just, I didn't mean to suggest that what Boots on the Ground now it's doing a great job. You guys are doing a great job. What I'm saying is I think we need boots on the ground on the contact tracing here in Clay County, not in St. Paul or Minneapolis. That's where I'm coming from, where I think we need those boots on the ground to handle that. Because I think this is something that contract tracing in terms of getting on it in hours could be great, could have a great impact on how far this spreads. Would you like to know within hours that you were around somebody who had it, or would you like to find out 5 days later? And then you've been around how many more people?
Right.
That's especially, and again, I say this more as we start to open up, and you're starting to see that conversation throughout the country, and throughout the world for that matter. So we need to have something locally in it.
Jim, did you have a
Set it up
question?
on it.
Yes, my question pertains to a conversation that Kathy and I had on Wednesday after our press conference, and that was in regards to disinfecting equipment that we would have access to. And I understand we have access to it through FM ambulance, but then Kathy and I spoke about perhaps the county obtaining some of that equipment of our own so that we can disinfect rooms or areas on the campus here, or areas within the county that find it necessary to do so. And did you have any information about that?
I think I talked with Gabe, and are they still waiting? Do you know,
Yeah,
Steve?
they've, I believe Gabe has put in for 2 of those machines, and I believe also the juvenile center has put in, but currently all of those guns are on back order.
Okay. Because the equipment's not prohibitively expensive, I don't believe, is it?
No, it's about, I think, I want to say $1,600 a piece.
Is it? Okay.
And the substance that they use is not terrifically expensive either, is it?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Worth the expense.
But it would be capable of cleaning out room by room in an assisted living facility or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, any further questions for Kathy or Josh?
So, yeah, just to reiterate, and Josh mentioned it, the facility down in Wayzata, the issue was they had no staff. I mean, staff either were ill, they were positive, or just afraid to work in that environment. So they ended up not being able to even manage the facilities, so it had to be evacuated, the entire facility, and I can't remember the numbers, how large they were, but we definitely are working very hard that would not happen in Clay County. We really want to get the staffing into those facilities, and Josh talked about the PPE we now have to our avail for those facilities, so we're doing everything we can to ensure that there would be no evacuation of any facility here, so.
I maybe want to go back to the point that I discussed earlier. I honestly feel that if Kathy, you identify, and if you're putting the pieces together in terms of what St. Paul can handle and what they can't, it sounds to me that in the next couple weeks, we will need to do contact tracing locally. And I agree with Commissioner Campbell. I think we should be doing that now. And so if you can come up with some sort of recommendation to Steve in terms of what you need, I would definitely make a motion to support that. It's hard to put a dollar amount on that. Maybe then we could retroactively act on that next week, but if you identify that need is needed, I would definitely make a motion to that effect.
I have a second motion.
Okay, we got a motion by Jenny and second by Kevin. Could you explain the motion?
My motion would be Kathy needs to hire, Public Health needs to hire a local entity to do contract tracing work. That would be proposed to Steve. Steve could approve it on our behalf so that we can get it done right away. And then Tuesday, our next board meeting, we can either act on it or discuss it going forward. But I think that's the least we can do to help flatten our local curve.
Good.
If I can, could that also include the ability to bring in somebody directly into public health that would be just for the purpose, it wouldn't be a permanent
Sure.
position, but, in case there isn't the outside agency that can do it.
Right, I guess that's maybe
Sure.
just whatever,
I guess that's what I-
whatever manpower hours that you
Right.
need,
Okay,
I would support that.
thank you.
Okay, we got a motion by Jenny, second by Kevin. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I could, yesterday I did participate in a webinar with Governor Walz, and he did indicate that what Kathy's mentioned, that there's a very good likelihood that at some point in the very near future, contract tracing will be transferred, or at least part of the responsibility, down to the counties, and so I just thought the board should be aware of that.
Well, I think it'll be more effective. Kathy, would you agree?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. We've talked about that and the delay, and we've talked with MDH about it, so they haven't taken a hard, firm, yes, we're going to do this yet, but I suspect it's coming out soon, this week.
But it's appropriate to take our guidelines from the federal government and the state, but at some point, we have to do what's in the best interest for us. And if we identify some inconsistencies or areas where we can improve, we need to do that now.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, anything
Okay.
further, Kathy?
I think that's it.
Thank you so much for that update again,
Thank
Josh.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for the highway department. Dave and Justin, got a grant agreement and opening of some bids here.
Morning.
Morning, Dave.
We've got a couple of agreements and resolutions to approve. First, these are for the box culvert or bridge replacements on County Road 2 and County Road 12. There is a resolution for each bridge removal replacement, as well as an agreement for each one. The one on County Road 2 is SAP 1460227. And like I said, that's got a resolution. So these numbers are as bid numbers. So what happens, is we put an estimate together, we get funding approval based on the engineer's estimate, hold the bid openings, and then at that time, we send our abstract back to MnDOT. They determine the actual grant agreement. This is the same agreement they've had in place for 20 plus years or so. And basically what this is stating is this is all the dollars, we are capped. These bridge bond dollars are capped. So if something happens out in the field or something that you don't get any additional funds, that's, I guess, the kind of main part of that. They keep a very close hold on their bridge bond dollars. They always have, and I think that's why it's so hard every other year to get these dollars, is they keep them pretty tight. But the grant agreement for the project on County Road 2 is $127,318.50. And like I said, we have a resolution and a grant agreement for the project on County Road 2. And then the grant agreement for the project on County Road 12 is $164,962.20. So I don't know if it'd be easy, could we
Make a
recommend
motion
that?
to approve 2020-18.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve 2020-18. Jenny, second by Kevin. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Also make a motion to approve resolution 2020-19.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Jenny, second by Jim to approve 2020-19. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? I didn't get a very loud aye there. I think we're still going here. I think it passed.
Thank you.
Okay, so we got those two bridge replacements passed. We can move ahead with those.
All right, our next item on our agenda is opening bids for the shoulder widening and mill and overlay project on County Road 14. This is just kind of south of Glendon there by the Glendon Beet Piler. On the west side is Trunk Highway 336, and it goes eastwardly over to County Road 17, about 2 miles or so. We ended up with 3 electronic bidders. We opened those at 9 o'clock and took a look, and everything does look pretty good so far on those. And then we do have 1 paper copy. Maybe we'll open that one last. The engineer's estimate for this project is $525,935.65. Does everybody have a bidder's list?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. Well, I'll go ahead and read. The first bidder is R.J. Zavril and Sons out of East Grand Forks. They do have a complete bid and a bid bond amount of 5%. There is one addendum as well, and we checked, and they have acknowledged the addendum. And their bid is $561,788.05. $561,788.05. The next electronic bidder is Central Specialties from Alexandria. They do have a complete bid, they do have a bid bond, and they acknowledge the addendum as well. And their bid is $475,788.05. $777.00. $475,777.00. And our last electronic bidder is Mark Sand and Gravel. I believe they're out of the Fergus Falls area. Complete bid, they do have acknowledged the addendum, and their bid is $472,111.45. $472,111.45. And then the last bidder that we do have on paper copies from Northern Improvement from Fargo, North Dakota. Sounds like a complete bid so far. Their bid is $547,105.90. $547,105.90. So I guess what we would like, if we could get a contingent approval based on letting us go back and tabulate things, making, double checking that there is no errors, and then being that there's a small amount of federal aid money for the shoulder pave portion of this project, we do have to get clearance from the Office of Civil Rights. And I think there's a 1% amount of DBE requirement on this, so as long as those requirements have been met, and they kind of appear like they have, so but we just need to get clearance from MnDOT on that.
I move approval with the conditions that our highway engineer.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Kevin, second by Grant to approve these contingent on the getting clearance.
Just one question, Mr. Chair.
And any further discussion on that?
Yeah, because this goes by a beat piler, obviously there is a time period that's sensitive here for completion of this.
Do you remember the completion date? I believe it's probably the end of August.
That's really close.
So that's really close to pre-pile, isn't it?
Yeah, September 1st.
Right.
I don't know if they're.
Is there any way you could request sooner?
Yeah, when we have our pre-construction meeting, we'll push to make sure that that gets done before weeks ahead of time.
Okay.
I mean, projects take extra time, as we all know.
Right.
There is no extra time on that date.
Right.
No, that's right. Wait.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll continue on reports. Kevin?
All right, on April 22nd, I had several meetings. The first one was a Prairie Lakes solid waste meeting, virtual meeting that we did. Couple of things there. The number of tons that being processed is falling short of the proposal or projected numbers. Nothing of major concern yet. We did have the funds to cover the first bond payment, which is always the critical thing coming up. We did have some discussion regarding proposed changes to some personnel things, but that's kind of tabled. And we have one of our customers in steam is slightly down in steam usage too, but hopefully that's going to turn around shortly. That same afternoon, we had diversion, public outreach, and land meeting. Those meetings, the primary thing on those two meetings was what Commissioner Mosier talked about, was the presentation from NDSU regarding the land potential impacts of the project to lands and the ag risk that could be there for when that project is operational. That was the primary discussion of both of those meetings that day. Also, there's been a 30-minute production put together called The Relentless Red. If you haven't seen it, it's a very good piece of work done that talks about the history of the red and the flooding and why this project is important. And that can be found on the fmdiversion.com website. For anybody who would like to go and view that, I would suggest you do that. Thursday, we had our MCC JPA meeting, and not a lot going on there. We did touch briefly on the NDSU Ag study at that as well. We've got a property acquisition status report. Commissioner Mojo mentioned that there was some issues regarding lands in Wilkin County. There were some of those that I think were acted on last night by the city council to move forward on to obtain that rights of entry to do the studies required by the Corps. I do want to make mention that the Buffalo Red board was successful in obtaining, I think it was 5. They got 5 of those properties to agree without having to have court action to do it. So, thank you to the Buffalo Red for doing that. Then we did, there's been a property that we've been dealing with the MCC JPA. It's a long, narrow piece of property that would be in the staging area, and we basically confirmed what we believed was the appropriate appraised value on that property, and those negotiations with that landowner continue. That afternoon, then the Diversion Authority met, and that was again on the Thursday, April 23rd. And the primary action of that was again we got the presentation on the NDSU study. It was primarily what we did there. So, and that concludes my report. Oh, I do want to mention. I'm sorry. I do want to mention and follow up with Bruce Albright from the Buffalo Red. I've been fortunate. I've been working with Bruce since probably 1993 when I was first elected as a township supervisor in Oakport, and so I've done an awful lot of work with Bruce. And you couldn't ask for a better administrator. He's gonna really be missed. I know in talking to Bruce, he's volunteered his service on a part-time basis to the watershed, and I think it would be in the watershed's best interest to take advantage of that experience and knowledge every step of the way that they can. And my hat's off to Bruce, and we've heard I mentioned here a few months ago about the award that they got for the Oakport project. Now they just got award, is it on the Manston Slough project? Is that correct, Jenny? They just got another award for the Manston Slough project, and the leader in all of those things, when you look at it, the success of all of those, the board does the voting and going for it, but the guy who's got the steering wheel and did the driving of those projects was Mr. Albright, and Clay County has been very fortunate that he's been at the helm of that steering wheel, and I just want to personally thank him for his many good years of service. Thank you, Mr.
Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Wednesday, April 22nd, along with Public Health Director Kathy McKay, I took part in the COVID-19 press conference with the mayors and the representatives from the hospitals and the health services in town here. That's my whole report.
Grant?
Let's see, I had the joint powers with Moorhead on the diversion. acquisitions also. Kevin reported on that and the diversion authority meetings, and Prairie Lakes also. And we had a PIC meeting last week, and we're starting to discuss how we're gonna open things up again when that starts happening, which I guess it is now, so we'll probably have more discussions on that today. And then I had a area agency on aging meeting yesterday, the Land of the Dancing Sky, and had updates and where we're sitting as far as funding and grants for this coming year. And we had a lot of discussion. There's a request from the Red Lake Reservation to assist them with meals for the time being, and so we're looking at what we can do to help them out. That was it for me.
Okay, I too was attended that PIC meeting in there. As Grant said, most of the discussion, or almost say all the discussion, was on the COVID-19. Tuesday night also the planning, that Jenny's talked about, the Board of Adjustments and the planning meeting. I wasn't really, I mean, I watched that and through Zoom, and she's already reported on the outcome of those things. Wednesday night at the Historical Society, there was discussion on putting a member from the Moorhead City Council on the board there. So I think there maybe has to be some change in bylaws or something, whatever, but they're trying to add a member because there's a lot of our discussions in our meetings have been involved with Moorhead is looking at either rent or combining the use of the Yamco Center along with some different departments in the city of Moorhead. So we're looking at getting a member of the Moorhead City Council on the Yamco's, excuse me, on the Historical Society Board. And also, there was discussion on the Moorhead, one of the Moorhead City Council members wanted a facility study done on the Yamco Center, and at this time we weren't quite involved with that yet. We didn't plan to get involved with that yet. Those were my meetings. Steve?
So, Mr. Chair, just in regards to your Yam Council, have they had any discussion if the Moorhead City Council person was added to that, would that change the structure of the voting?
Yes, it would, I guess. We're going to add one more member because we weren't, we were not planning on dropping anything here, so that would be an addition. That's why the bylaws would have to be changed somewhat.
Okay, thank you. And last Tuesday, I attended the PIC meeting that's been covered by Commissioner Whalen and Commissioner Gross. That afternoon, I met with Georgia on a series of issues with the custodians and the Family Service Center. On Wednesday, I met with Kathy on COVID updates throughout the county. That afternoon, I met with Mark Sloan and Tim Dent. We're really looking at the capabilities of our current website and moving forward, if there's ways that we can work with our citizens to be more user-friendly for all of our departments. I spoke with Gabe Tweeten from Emergency Management on a series of COVID-related matters, and also Joe Olson and on COVID matters, and also the boiler project. The boiler has been completely removed from the basement. They're now waiting for the new boiler to come in, which is interesting because, as Commissioner Gross has talked about, it was two large boilers, and now it's going to be about something the size of a refrigerator. And so we'll definitely have some additional room in that, but I think we're waiting about 3 weeks for that to come in.
I thought Brian already took that room over.
Can we use it for a courtroom?
On Thursday morning, we met as a management group, received an update from Kathy in Public Health, and had some discussions on operations for the county. That afternoon, we met as the MCC JPA that's been covered by Commissioner Campbell and Whalen. On Friday, I met with James O'Donnell and had some discussions on operations, questions. Yesterday, as I mentioned, I participated in the AMC webinar hosted that had Governor Walz as a part of that. Some of the highlights that Governor Walz discussed was today, Vice President Pence will be in at the Mayo Clinic. They'll be highlighting the collaboration between the state of Minnesota, the U of M, and Mayo Clinic on their ability to provide up to 20,000 tests per day. I also touched on executive order, which is allowing some workers in non-customer facing industries and office-based businesses who don't have the ability to work from home to come back. Again, the governor stated that they're working closely with our public health departments and MDH to make sure that we're, as we go back to work, that we have sustained and controlled of new infections and hospitalizations, and make sure that we're able to handle any resurgence with our hospitals. The hope and the goal of Executive Order 20-40 will be that it'll get about 100,000 of our 500,000 citizens back to work who have applied for unemployment insurance since the mid-March. There's also some other questions posed by people whether or not how our local main streets can get back to work, and also what the likelihood that we'll have large gatherings such as county fairs and things like that. And so didn't necessarily get a clear answer on that, but certainly they're working towards the possibilities of those things happening. Also touched on Minnesota received its second allotment from the federal CARES program. We have about $2.1 billion that right now the Minnesota Treasury is providing guidance on how that will be distributed throughout the state. Governor Walz indicated that his hope is that he always feels that local control is best, so how they allocate those dollars, he hopefully will have some of that'll go directly to us at the county. On a second note, the governor still feels very strongly that there's going to be a robust bonding bill, and he feels that the hope is that that'll get taken care of prior to the May 18th end of the legislature. We also heard an update from Julie Rang, Executive Director of AMC, and Matt Hilgart. There's some discussions that are taking place in the federal level that FEMA is looking at increasing the reimbursement amount from 75% to 100%. It has not happened yet, but that's something that AMC is tracking. MMB in the state is looking at potentially doing another forecast at the end of May just to see where the revenues of the state are and what the impacts of the COVID has been. And I think that we did have an update. They stated that the House has indicated that they are not going to weigh in any tax relief, leaving any decisions on tax relief to the individual counties. We have made the decision to, through collaboration with the city of Moorhead and the Moorhead School District, we have canceled our joint powers meeting for May 7th. We may look into having a meeting in June if the pandemic would allow. Otherwise, we are scheduled to go on break until next September. And also would like to note for our citizens that the spring auction has currently been postponed. They're looking at potentially a new date. They're seeing if there's something that they could do online. Otherwise, we would be looking at a fall auction, which will be September 26th. So, and that concludes my report.
Okay. I think Steve alluded to, as far as our tax season, first payment's due May 15th, and some counties have taken some action on the laying of penalties or something like that, but very few counties. I think there's only 17 counties right now that have taken some action on that. Most of them have not. So right now at this time, I don't think we've had any requests or not. And according to Lori, I guess payments are coming in pretty regularly. So
that's correct. In talking with Lori, we've had payments coming in. Actually, came in earlier than normal previous years. They're coming in at full payments. And so at this point, there hasn't been any contact or very limited contact from our citizens.
yeah, I think a lot of property taxes are paid by escrow anyway. So okay, anything further? If not, we're adjourned.